Well, another ride-sharing app wants a piece of Toronto streets. Lyft is moving into the city. Sunil Johal joins us now, Policy Director at the Mowat School at U of T. Let's talk about Lyft entering here, because they're just like Uber. Uber did all the heavy lifting in the city to get past the regulatory hurdles, and now Lyft is coming in. So is that their MO? Is that what they do in cities across the U.S.?
It seems like it's working out perfectly for them like that here in Toronto. In the U.S., they've often been in the market at the same time as Uber or around the same time. But here, as you mentioned, they've waited for Uber to take all the lumps from regulators and from taxi drivers, and now they can come in and look like the good guy.
And is that their sort of plan here? Because, I mean, Uber has taken a lot of knocks. The taxi industry has taken a lot of knocks. So what do you expect their business plan to be here in the city?
They do often try and sell themselves as the warmer, friendlier, ride-sharing company. So I expect we'll see a similar approach here in Toronto. But, I mean, fundamentally, if you look at what they do, it's basically exactly the same as Uber. They have an app, they have drivers, and they're taking people from point A to point B. Fundamentally, they're doing pretty much exactly the same thing. But the bad PR around Uber, I think, is making a lot of people look for other options, and Lyft may well be that option for people in Toronto.
You know, one major complaint from consumers about Uber is the surge pricing. Does Lyft surge price?
They do. They have, again, the very similar approach. It's hidden, as Uber's is now hidden, so your price will just seem inordinately high at a busy time of day, and that's because they need more drivers on the road. But I think what will be easier now for people is you can toggle between the apps and say, okay, well, I'm going to save $3.
There's someone getting out of an Uber right now behind
There we go.
Yeah.
It's happening all over the place. But they can toggle between the apps and say, oh, this ride on Lyft will save me $2, or this ride on Uber will save me $3. So it'll give consumers that extra level of choice.
So will more choice actually mean a discount or a more competitive landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. I think more competition in this marketplace will make sure that no company can raise its prices out of whack with what consumers want to pay. And if somebody does try and raise their prices, then, well, your competitor is going to say, hey, look, come to us. And it's as easy as switching apps on your phone. So I think this, overall, it's good news for consumers, and it's good news for drivers as well.
So what does this mean to the taxi drivers that are on the street? Are they going to have to up their game here? What happens in other cities where taxis are involved and taxis are losing a part of their pie?
I mean, I think the big hit to taxis has already happened with Uber coming on board and with the city legalizing ride-sharing generally. Adding Lyft to the scene isn't really going to change too much in that direction. It's just going to continue that incremental erosion of the taxi industry as we once knew it.
And are there other competitors in the landscape that maybe we haven't heard of? I mean, Lyft is a familiar name, especially if you traveled around the U.S. Are there others out there?
Nothing at the scale of Lyft or Uber right now. I mean, those two companies account for about 98% of the ride-sharing market in the United States. So we've got a number of very small companies that are trying to get that name recognition so that people will actually download their apps and use them. But right now, it's really a two-horse race in North America when it comes to ride-sharing.
And at the end of the day, it's about consumers just wanting to get from point A to point B, I guess.
It is. I mean, we have to also think about what are the impacts on congestion. Are these ride-sharing apps bringing more cars onto the street that wouldn't have been there otherwise? That's a concern. But generally speaking, I would say most people feel they're in a better place now than they were 5 years ago when it comes to ground transportation in the city.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Okay, and you know, we are looking at the commute on City News over the next few weeks. So if you have a commuting story you want to share, maybe you have comments about ride-sharing companies, we want you to tweet us, use the hashtag CityCommutes.